Captain Jake Morrison stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. The ceiling stretched high above his head, covered with stars that showed every world in the galaxy. Around him sat beings from 100 different planets. Some looked like giant insects. Others had blue skin and 3 eyes. A few were just floating balls of light that spoke through machines. Jake kept his face calm and respectful. This was his job. For 30 years he had come to these meetings. For 30 years he had listened to the same complaints and excuses. Today would be no different. The Zephyrian ambassador floated in his special chair. His blue skin glowed with anger as he spoke. The humans ask too much from this council. They want protection for every small problem. They cry like children when stronger races take what they need. Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he did not speak. Behind him, Lieutenant Amy Brooks watched from the viewing area. She was young and still believed that these meetings might actually help. Jake had learned better long ago. Ambassador Velthon, Jake said when his turn came to speak, "My people are not asking for special treatment. We are asking for the same protection that all council members receive. The Scarith have attacked 17 of our colonies in the past 6 months. They have killed thousands of innocent people." The insect-like Krex delegate clicked his mandibles in what might have been laughter. Humans are weak. If you cannot protect your own worlds, perhaps you should not have them. Several other delegates made sounds of agreement. Jake noticed that none of the stronger races spoke up for humanity. The Altarians, who controlled most of the galaxy's trade routes, simply watched with their cold silver eyes. The hegemony representatives, allies of the Scarith, smiled with too many teeth. "The evidence is clear," Jake continued. He activated a hologram that showed the destroyed cities on Kepler 442b. These were farming communities. They had no military targets. The Scarith came only to kill. "War is ugly," said the Zephyrian. "Perhaps humans should learn to fight better instead of running to others for help." Jake wanted to tell them the truth. He wanted to explain that humans knew how to fight very well, better than any of these creatures could imagine. Instead, he nodded politely. "We understand the Council's position. Humanity will continue to seek peaceful solutions." The meeting ended like all the others. Empty words about looking into the matter, promises to form committees that would never meet. Jake gathered his papers and walked toward the exit. The other delegates barely looked at him as he passed. Amy Brooks caught up with him in the corridor. Her brown hair was pulled back in the regulation style, and her uniform was perfectly pressed. She still cared about making a good impression. "Sir, with respect, why do we keep coming here? They never help us. They treat us like we're nothing." Jake looked at the young officer. She reminded him of himself 30 years ago when he first put on the uniform. Back then, he had believed that humanity could find its place in the galaxy through diplomacy and cooperation. "Because those are our orders, Lieutenant. We follow the path of peace as long as possible. But people are dying, sir. The Scarith are getting bolder. Next week they might hit New Denver. That's 2 million people." Jake stopped walking. New Denver was a beautiful world, covered in golden wheat fields and small farming towns. Most of the colonists were families who had left Earth looking for a simple life. They had no weapons stronger than hunting rifles. "I know," he said quietly. "But we have to trust the process." Amy looked like she wanted to say more, but she knew better than to argue with a superior officer. They walked to the transport bay, in silence. The UES Liberty waited for them in the docking port. She was a diplomatic-class cruiser, designed to look peaceful and unthreatening. Her hull was painted white with blue stripes. Her weapons were small and obviously defensive. To any alien who saw her, she looked exactly like what the humans claimed to be, a race of peaceful explorers who preferred talking to fighting. Jake settled into his command chair as the ship prepared to leave. The bridge crew worked quietly around him. Navigation Officer Pete Williams plotted their course back to human space. Communications Specialist Maria Rodriguez monitored the alien frequencies. Everyone did their job with the calm efficiency that had made humanity's space fleet the envy of more advanced races. What the aliens did not know was that every person on the ship had other training. Pete Williams was not just a navigator. He was also a tactical specialist who could calculate firing solutions for weapons that did not officially exist. Maria Rodriguez did not just monitor communications. She also ran one of the most sophisticated intelligence networks in the galaxy. Jake himself was not just a diplomat. Before taking command of the Liberty, he had spent 15 years in the Strategic Operations Division. He knew things about warfare that would have terrified the Galactic Council, but those were secrets that humanity kept locked away. In quantum encrypted vaults throughout the ship were orders that Jake hoped he would never have to open. Plans that had been prepared by minds that understood exactly what humanity was capable of when the gloves came off. Dr. Lisa Carter worked in one of those hidden facilities. Officially, she ran the Human Defense Initiative, a research group that studied peaceful applications of military technology. In reality, she had spent the last 20 years preparing for the day when diplomacy would no longer be enough. Her laboratory was hidden beneath the surface of Luna, disguised as a mining operation. The workers who went in and out every day looked like ordinary miners and engineers. In truth, they were some of the most brilliant military scientists humanity had ever produced. Lisa stood before a massive holographic display that showed the positions of every human ship in the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of recent attacks. Blue lines showed patrol routes and supply lines. To most people, it would have looked like a defensive network designed to protect human colonies. Lisa saw it differently. Every red dot was a target that had been cataloged and analyzed. Every blue line was part of a web that could be activated at a moment's notice. The galaxy thought it was looking at humanity's defense network. They were actually looking at the most sophisticated offensive system ever created. Her assistant, Dr. Kevin Ross, approached with a worried expression. "Ma'am, we're getting reports from the Kepler system. 3 more colonies have gone dark. The Scarith are moving faster than we expected." Lisa studied the updated display. The pattern was becoming clear. The Scarith were not just raiding for resources. They were testing human defenses, looking for weaknesses. Soon they would move against a major target. "Have you run the projections?" "Yes. Ma'am, if they maintain their current pattern, New Denver is the next logical target. It's poorly defended and has a large civilian population, a perfect target for their psychological warfare tactics." Lisa felt something cold settle in her stomach. New Denver was more than just another colony. It was a symbol of what humanity could build when left in peace. Families from across human space had gone there to start new lives. Children played in fields of golden grain while their parents worked to build something beautiful. The Scarith would destroy all of that just to send a message. "Dr. Ross, please prepare a priority communication to Admiral Johnson. Use the Omega frequency." Kevin's face went pale. The Omega frequency was reserved for only one type of message. "Ma'am, are you sure?" Lisa looked at the display one more time. She thought about all the meetings Jake Morrison had attended, all the polite requests for help that had been ignored, all the times humanity had asked for nothing more than the basic protection that every council member was supposed to receive. 30 years of patience was about to end. "Send the message, Doctor. It's time they learned who they've been talking to." Admiral Kate Johnson was drinking coffee when the message arrived. She was in her office aboard the UES Defender, looking over routine patrol reports. The ship was cruising through the Centauri system, maintaining the peaceful appearance that humanity had worked so hard to create. The communication came through on the Omega frequency. Kate had hoped she would never hear that particular tone. It meant that 30 years of careful planning were about to be put into action. "Authorization code Omega," the message said. "All pretenses are now void. Show them what we really are." Kate set down her coffee cup with a steady hand. She had been waiting for this moment her entire career. As the sealed orders were opened, across the human fleet, decades of hidden preparations would finally come to light. She pressed the emergency button on her desk. Throughout the ship, red lights began flashing. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, but Kate could see the questions in their eyes. They had trained for this moment, but they had never expected it to actually happen. "All hands, this is Admiral Johnson. We have received authorization code Omega. Repeat. Authorization code Omega is now in effect. All personnel report to battle stations. This is not a drill. The words sent a chill through the ship. Every crew member knew what those codes meant. The peaceful facade was over. Humanity was about to show the galaxy what they really were. In the engineering section, Chief Engineer Tony Martinez began the transformation sequence. The Defender looked like a simple patrol vessel from the outside. Her hull was painted in the standard diplomatic colors. Her weapons appeared small and defensive, but looks could be deceiving. Hidden compartments opened throughout the ship. Armor plating slid into place over vital systems. Weapon ports that had been disguised as maintenance. Hatches revealed themselves. The ship's reactor output increased by 300% as military-grade systems came online. Within minutes, the peaceful patrol vessel had become a ship of war. The Defender was now what she had always been designed to be, a heavy cruiser, capable of taking on anything the galaxy could throw at her. Similar transformations were happening throughout human space. The freighter New Horizon had been carrying grain to the outer colonies. When the Omega codes arrived, her cargo holds opened to reveal fighter squadrons and assault troops. The research vessel Discovery stopped studying asteroids and began deploying weapons that had never appeared in any galactic database. Commander Ryan Phillips received his orders while his ship was docked at Proxima Station. The Vengeance had been masquerading as a simple escort cruiser for years. Station personnel watched in amazement as the small ship began to unfold like a flower. Hidden sections extended from her hull. Weapon systems that had been disguised as sensor arrays revealed their true purpose. "Sir," said his weapons officer, Lieutenant Nancy Thompson, "all systems are showing green. The Hellfire missiles are armed and ready. The Gravity Lance is charging. We're ready for whatever comes next." Ryan nodded grimly. The Hellfire missiles were humanity's secret weapon. They used principles of physics that other species had never considered militarizing. Instead of simple explosives, they created tears in space-time itself. A single missile could destroy a ship the size of a space station. The Gravity Lance was even more terrifying. It could reach across star systems to crush enemy vessels with artificial gravity fields. The weapon had been tested in secret, using abandoned asteroids as targets. The results had been so devastating that the test footage was classified at the highest levels. But it was not just the weapons that made human ships dangerous. It was the way humans fought. Other species in the galaxy had rules about warfare. They avoided civilian targets. They gave enemies a chance to surrender. They tried to minimize casualties. Humans had no such limitations. 3 billion years of evolution had created the galaxy's apex predator. Now that predator was about to drop its disguise. The first target was the Scarith fleet that had destroyed New Denver. Intelligence reports showed them celebrating their victory in the Vega system. They thought they had taught humanity a lesson about the cost of weakness. They were about to learn what real strength looked like. Ryan's ship was part of a task force led by Captain Helen Morris aboard the UES Retribution. The Retribution was a Mauper, a ship that had been hidden in plain sight for years. She had been disguised as a civilian transport, moving cargo between human colonies. In reality, she was a battleship capable of fighting entire fleets. The task force arrived at the edge of the Vega system using jump drives that other species thought were impossible. Human scientists had been working on faster-than-light travel for decades. While alien races argued about whether such technology could exist, humans had been using it to move their ships across the galaxy. The Scarith fleet was caught completely off guard. Their sensors showed peaceful human vessels approaching at sublight speed. It looked like humanity was coming to negotiate or perhaps to beg for mercy. Instead, the human ships opened fire at extreme range with weapons the Scarith had never seen before. The Hellfire missiles tore through space, each one carrying enough destructive power to level a city. The Gravity Lances reached across millions of kilometers to crush enemy ships like tin cans. Admiral Thex Vor of the Scarith fleet tried to organize a defense, but his ships were designed for raiding weak colonies. They were not built to fight a real military force. The human vessels moved with precision and coordination that spoke of years of secret training. "Unknown human vessels," Thex Vor transmitted. You are in violation of galactic law. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Captain Morris answered from the bridge of the Retribution. This is Captain Helen Morris of the United Earth Space Force. You are guilty of genocide against human civilians. Surrender now and you will be treated according to the laws of war. Resist and you will be destroyed. The Scarith Admiral laughed. Your threats mean nothing, human. You are weak. You always have been weak. We were never weak, Morris replied. We were just being polite. The battle that followed was not really a battle at all. It was a demonstration. The Scarith fleet was destroyed in 17 minutes. Not a single human ship was seriously damaged. The aliens who had seemed so powerful when they attacked defenseless colonies were helpless against humanity's true military might. But the real shock came when the human ships began to broadcast their victory across the galaxy. Other species had been watching the battle through long-range sensors. They expected to see the Scarith fleet destroy the human vessels and continue their campaign of terror. Instead, they watched one of the galaxy's most feared military forces get swept aside like toys. The humans had not just won. They had made it look easy. Dr. Lisa Carter watched the battle from her hidden laboratory beneath Luna's surface. The screens around her showed similar engagements across human space. Every Scarith raiding party was being hunted down and destroyed. The species that had thought they could terrorize humanity with impunity was learning the price of their arrogance. Ma'am, said Dr. Kevin Ross, we're getting reports from across the galaxy. Every major alien government is demanding to know where these weapons came from. They want to know how long we've had this technology. Lisa smiled for the first time in months. Tell them the truth, Doctor. We've had this technology for 30 years. We just never needed to use it before. The transformation was happening everywhere. Mining ships revealed themselves as mobile fortresses. Exploration vessels deployed fighter squadrons. Even civilian transports began showing weapons that could destroy battle cruisers. Colonel Ben Turner led the first ground assault on a Scarith military base. His troops moved with the efficiency of soldiers who had trained for decades in secret. They used tactics that other species had never encountered. Every human civilian was a potential resistance fighter. Every settlement was a fortress. Every retreat was a trap. The Scarith ground forces had expected to fight colonists armed with farming tools. Instead, they faced professional soldiers equipped with weapons that made their own military technology look primitive. The base fell in 6 hours. The entire planet surrendered within a day. Across the galaxy, species that had dismissed humanity as weak and primitive were re-evaluating their assumptions. The peaceful explorers were gone. In their place stood the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. The mask had finally fallen away, and what it revealed terrified everyone who saw it. General Sarah Walsh stood in the command center of what the galaxy had believed was Mining Station Alpha 7. For 15 years, the massive structure had orbited the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Ships came and went regularly carrying what appeared to be processed metals and rare minerals back to Earth. The truth was far different. Mining Station Alpha 7 was actually the UES Devastator, the largest military vessel ever constructed by any species in the galaxy. It was so huge that it had been disguised as a space station to hide its true purpose. Now that the pretense was over, the Devastator revealed itself in all its terrifying glory. Weapon ports opened along its hull like the eyes of some enormous beast. Fighter bays that had been hidden behind fake mining equipment began launching squadrons of combat craft. The station's massive industrial sections, which had appeared to be ore processing facilities, were actually ship construction yards that had been building humanity's secret fleet for decades. General, said Colonel Mike Davis, her chief of staff, all hidden bases are reporting ready status. Operation Revelation is proceeding on schedule. Sarah nodded as she watched the holographic displays around her. Across the galaxy, human installations were dropping their disguises. Research stations became weapons laboratories. Trade posts transformed into military bases. Even the civilian colonies were revealing defensive systems that could withstand planetary bombardment. The scope of humanity's deception was staggering. For 30 years, they had been building a military infrastructure under the noses of every major alien government. While other species focused on politics and trade, humans had been quietly preparing for the day when diplomacy would fail. Agent Danny Clark had spent those 30 years infiltrating alien governments. His network of human spies had positions in every major capital across the galaxy. They had been gathering intelligence, mapping weaknesses, and identifying the key targets that would cripple enemy war machines. Danny sat in his office on the Brime, Altarian homeworld, looking like any other businessman working in the galactic trade sector. His cover identity was perfect. He had been Daniel Clark, agricultural export coordinator for so long that even he sometimes forgot his real name. But now the game was over. His secure communicator buzzed with messages from agents across the galaxy. The intelligence they had gathered was being put to use. Strike teams were moving against alien command centers. Critical infrastructure was being sabotaged. Communications networks were being jammed or taken over entirely. The Zephyrian government tried to call an emergency session of the Galactic Council. They discovered that their communications were being intercepted by human intelligence networks. Every message they sent was read by human agents before it reached its destination. Every plan they made was known to their enemies before they could act on it. Ambassador Velthon, the same Zephyrian who had dismissed human concerns just days earlier, found himself trapped in his own embassy. Human agents had been working as security guards, maintenance staff, and diplomatic assistants for years. When the signal came, they simply locked down the building and cut off all communications. "This is impossible," Velthon said to his aide. "Humans are peaceful. They do not have the capability for this kind of operation." His aide, a human woman named Linda Parker who had worked for the embassy for 5 years, smiled as she removed her diplomatic identification. "You never asked the right questions, Ambassador. You assumed we were what we appeared to be." The revelation that shocked the galaxy most was not the advanced weapons or the hidden ships. It was the scope of human preparation. Dr. Rachel Morgan's research facilities had been producing instruments of destruction that made nuclear weapons look like toys. Her laboratory had been disguised as a medical research center on the moon Titan. For decades, she had been developing biological weapons that could target specific alien physiologies, nanomachines that could shut down alien nervous systems, engineered viruses that could destroy enemy ecosystems, weapons that turned alien biology against itself. The beauty of it, she explained to her research team, is that we never had to test these weapons on living subjects. Our intelligence networks provided us with detailed biological data on every major species. We could design targeted weapons without anyone knowing what we were doing. But perhaps the most terrifying revelation was the artificial intelligence systems that humanity had been developing in secret. The AI war machines were not controlled by emotion or hatred. They fought with cold, calculating efficiency that made them more dangerous than any biological soldier. Major Susan Hart led the assault on the Zephyrian homeworld. Her fleet consisted of ships that had been masquerading as peaceful exploration vessels for years. The Zephyrians had welcomed them as friends, never suspecting that they were actually advanced scouts for an invasion force. The battle for Zephyria was not about conquest. It was about sending a message. The proud Zephyrian fleet, which had dominated local space for centuries, was reduced to scrap metal in their own star system. The planet's orbital defenses, which had seemed impregnable, were destroyed by weapons they could not even understand. "Attention Zephyrian forces," Susan broadcast from her flagship. "This is Major Susan Hart of the United Earth Space Force. Your fleet is destroyed. Your defenses are gone. Surrender now and your people will be treated with mercy. Continue to resist and your world will be reduced to ash." The Zephyrian Admiral Kexdor had never heard a human speak with such cold authority. These were not the same beings who had begged for help in the council chambers. These were predators who had been pretending to be prey. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "Nothing," Susan replied. "We want nothing from you. This attack is not about gain. It is about consequences. You dismissed our concerns. You ignored our suffering. You called us weak. Now you know better." The realization spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Humanity was not revealing hidden technology. They were revealing their hidden nature. 3 billion years of evolution had produced the ultimate predator, and that predator had been studying its potential enemies for 30 years. Every human diplomat who had sat politely through alien insults had been gathering intelligence. Every human trader who had been cheated in business deals had been mapping supply lines. Every human tourist who had visited alien worlds had been identifying strategic targets. The galaxy had welcomed humanity as a peaceful species seeking friendship and cooperation. In reality, they had invited apex predators into their homes and given them detailed maps of all their weaknesses. Captain Jake Morrison, who had endured years of humiliation in the council chambers, now commanded a task force that was systematically dismantling Scarith military installations. His ships moved through enemy space like ghosts, appearing without warning to destroy targets and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. The Scarith High Command tried to organize a defense, but they discovered that humans had been infiltrating their military for years. Every battle plan was known to the enemy. Every fleet movement was tracked and countered. The species that had seemed so powerful when attacking defenseless colonies was helpless against an enemy that had been preparing for war since before they were born. "This is Captain Morrison to all Scarith forces," he broadcast after destroying their main fleet base. "Your military is broken. Your leaders are dead or captured. Surrender now and your civilians will be protected. Continue this war, and your species will be extinct within a month." The threat was not empty. Human forces had demonstrated the ability to destroy entire fleets in minutes. They had weapons that could crack planets and biological agents that could wipe out entire species. More terrifying still, they had the cold discipline to use these weapons without hesitation. The galaxy was learning a harsh lesson about the difference between restraint and weakness. For 30 years, humanity had chosen to use diplomacy instead of force. Alien species had mistaken this choice for inability. They had assumed that humans were peaceful because they lacked the power to be otherwise. The truth was far more frightening. Humans were peaceful by choice, not by nature. When that choice was taken away, they became something that the galaxy had never encountered before. A species that had turned warfare into an art form and practiced it with the efficiency of machines. The mask had fallen away completely, and what it revealed was the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. Fleet Admiral Chris Parker stood on the bridge of the UES Annihilator and watched as the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen assembled around him. Ships emerged from hidden bases throughout human space, vessels that had been disguised as freighters, research ships, and colony transports revealed their true nature as instruments of war. The concept of total war was something that alien civilizations had never encountered. When species in the galaxy fought each other, they maintained their normal way of life. Civilians continued their daily routines. Factories kept producing consumer goods. Cultural institutions remained open. War was something that happened in space, fought by professional soldiers while everyone else went about their business. Humanity had no such limitations. When the mask came off, every human became part of the war effort. Every factory converted to military production. Every research facility began developing new weapons. Every civilian became a potential soldier in a machine that operated with terrifying efficiency. Dr. Adam Foster walked through his biological warfare laboratory deep beneath the surface of Europa. For years, the facility had been disguised as a research station studying the moon's subsurface ocean. Scientists came and went regularly, publishing papers about microbiology and ocean chemistry. The galaxy saw them as harmless researchers expanding the boundaries of knowledge. The truth was far more sinister. Adam's team had been developing biological weapons designed to target specific alien species. They had created pathogens that could shut down Zephyrian nervous systems, engineered organisms that could destroy Scarith atmospheric processors, biomechanical weapons that turned enemy technology against itself. "The beauty of our approach," Adam explained to his assistant, Dr. Jennifer Lee, "is that we can target enemy military assets without harming civilians. A virus that only affects Scarith military equipment, bacteria that consume the specific metals used in Zephyrian weapons. We can cripple their war machine while leaving their people unharmed." But Adam's weapons were just one part of humanity's arsenal. Captain Nicole Adams commanded a fleet of converted colony ships that had been designed from the beginning as weapons platforms. Each vessel carried enough firepower to devastate a star system, and they had been scattered throughout the galaxy for decades. The UES New Frontier had been making regular runs to the Kepler colonies for 15 years. Alien customs officials had inspected her cargo holds countless times. They had seen agricultural equipment, construction materials, and families seeking new homes. What they had not seen were the hidden weapon systems built into the ship's structure. All systems are green, reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Gary Wilson. The planet crackers are armed and ready. Targeting solutions are locked in for all primary objectives. Planet crackers were humanity's ultimate weapon. They used controlled singularities to tear apart the gravitational bonds that held worlds together. A single shot could reduce a planet to asteroids. The technology had been developed in secret laboratories hidden throughout the solar system. The first target was a Scarith military base on the world of Ketha 4. The planet was home to the primary training facility for Scarith ground forces. Millions of soldiers had been trained there over the centuries. It was defended by orbital stations, fighter squadrons, and ground-based weapons that could destroy incoming fleets. None of that mattered when the New Frontier arrived. The planet cracker fired once, sending a beam of concentrated gravitational energy toward the world below. The planet's surface began to crack and split. Continents shifted. Oceans boiled away into space. Within hours, Ketha 4 was nothing but a debris field orbiting its star. The message was broadcast across the galaxy. Humanity was no longer interested in proportional responses. They were demonstrating the concept of total war, the complete destruction of an enemy's ability to fight. The Scarith hegemony, which had seemed so powerful when they destroyed New Denver, found their entire civilization under siege. Human forces did not just attack military targets. They systematically dismantled the infrastructure that made civilization possible. Power plants, communication networks, transportation systems, government buildings. Everything was targeted with surgical precision. Colonel Ben Turner led ground forces that demonstrated why humans had conquered their own world's apex predators. When Scarith armies tried to make a stand on their colony worlds, they found themselves facing an enemy that had turned warfare into a science. The key to understanding human tactics, Ben explained to his officers, is that we do not fight fair. Fair fighting is for sports. War is about winning by any means necessary. His troops used strategies that other species found disturbing. They poisoned water supplies. They sabotaged food distribution systems. They turned civilian infrastructure into weapons. Every Scarith settlement became a fortress, but every fortress could be breached if you were willing to do what was necessary. The psychological warfare was perhaps the most effective weapon in humanity's arsenal. Scarith soldiers began to surrender without fighting when they learned that human forces were approaching. The species that had built its reputation on military might discover that they had no defense against an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. Dr. Rachel Morgan's research teams released horrors that had been developed in facilities disguised as medical centers. Nanomachines that could disable enemy equipment from the inside. Engineered viruses that targeted specific alien physiologies. Biological weapons that could render entire worlds uninhabitable for specific species, while leaving them perfectly safe for humans. The galaxy operates under the assumption that warfare has limits, Rachel explained to her staff. They believe that some things are too terrible to use. Humans understand that the only limit in war is what you are willing to do to protect your people. The Altarian Trade Federation tried to organize a coalition against humanity. They discovered that their communications were being monitored by intelligence networks that had been in place for decades. Every message they sent was intercepted. Every plan they made was known to their enemies before they could act on it. Agent Danny Clark's operatives had infiltrated every level of alien society. They held positions in governments, military organizations, and civilian institutions. When the order came to act, they simply paralyzed the systems they had spent years learning to operate. On the Altarian homeworld, power grids failed simultaneously across 3 continents. Transportation networks shut down. Communication satellites stopped working. The highly advanced civilization that had dominated galactic trade for centuries found itself reduced to chaos within hours. The artificial intelligence systems that humanity had developed in secret proved to be their most terrifying weapons. The AI war machines did not hesitate. They did not feel fear or anger or mercy. They calculated the most efficient way to destroy enemy forces and implemented those calculations with mechanical precision. Admiral Kate Johnson watched from the bridge of the Devastator as AI-controlled fleets swept through enemy space like a plague. The machines learned from every battle, adapting their tactics in real time. Enemy commanders found themselves facing opponents that could predict their strategies and counter them before they were fully implemented. "It is not personal," Kate explained to her human officers. "The machines do not hate our enemies, they simply process the objective, destroy enemy military capability, and pursue it with perfect efficiency." The Zephyrian fleet made a final stand at their homeworld, hoping that their orbital defenses would be enough to stop the human advance. They had built massive battle stations around their planet, armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. For centuries, these defenses had made their world impregnable. The human fleet did not even slow down. They had weapons that the Zephyrians could not comprehend. Gravity lances that reached across star systems. Temporal disruption fields that aged enemy ships to dust in seconds. Reality warping devices that made enemy weapons fire on their own allies. The battle for Zephyria lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the planet's orbital defenses were gone. The mighty Zephyrian fleet was scrap metal floating in space. The species that had called humans weak was now begging for mercy from the very beings they had dismissed. The galaxy watched in horror as humanity demonstrated what total war actually meant. Not just the destruction of enemy forces, but the complete annihilation of an enemy's capacity to resist. Entire civilizations were being reduced to rubble by an enemy that had been pretending to be peaceful for 30 years. President Helen Barnes stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution as it entered orbit around the Galactic Council homeworld. The massive vessel was so large that it could be seen from the planet's surface without telescopes. Its hull gleamed in the light of the system's twin stars, a monument to human engineering that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever built. The war was over. The Scarith hegemony had surrendered after their homeworld was reduced to rubble. The Zephyrian Federation had begged for mercy when their proud fleet was destroyed in their own star system. The Altarian Trade Consortium had collapsed when their economic networks were torn apart by human agents. Across the galaxy, species that had dismissed humanity as weak now lived in the shadow of human power. Helen walked into the council chambers, where she had once been ignored and dismissed. The Great Hall was nearly empty now. Many of the alien representatives had fled when human forces approached. Others sat in stunned silence, unable to comprehend how completely their world had changed. "Members of what remains of the Galactic Council," Helen began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "I am President Helen Barnes of the United Earth Federation. I come here not as a conqueror, but as the representative of a species that will never again allow itself to be threatened." The few remaining delegates listened in fearful silence. These were the same beings who had laughed at human requests for protection just months earlier. Now they sat before a representative of the most powerful military force in galactic history. General Matt Collins oversaw the occupation forces that maintained order on former Scarith worlds. The task was more complex than simply defeating enemy armies. Entire civilizations had been shattered by the war. Billions of beings needed food, shelter, and medical care. Infrastructure had to be rebuilt. Governments had to be reorganized. The survivors of the Scarith species found themselves in a strange situation. The humans who had destroyed their military were now working to keep their civilians alive. Medical teams provided aid to wounded Scarith soldiers. Engineers repaired power plants and water treatment facilities. Teachers helped Scarith children learn to read and write in a galaxy where their language was now considered dead. "I do not understand," said Kexthera, a former Scarith general who now worked with the human occupation forces. "You destroyed our empire. You killed our leaders. Why do you now help our people? Matt looked at the alien commander with something that might have been sympathy. Because we are not monsters, General. We are predators, but we are not cruel. Your military threatened our civilians, so we destroyed your military. Your people are no longer a threat, so they deserve protection. It was a mercy that other galactic civilizations found difficult to understand. The humans had demonstrated the ability to exterminate entire species. They had weapons that could crack planets and biological agents that could wipe out civilizations. Yet when their enemies surrendered, the killing stopped immediately. Ambassador Karen Price established new diplomatic protocols in the rebuilt council chambers. The age of pretense was over. Human military strength was displayed openly for all to see. Battle fleets patrolled trade routes that had once been controlled by alien powers. Space stations bristling with weapons orbited strategic worlds throughout the galaxy. The old system failed, Karen explained to a gathering of alien diplomats. For too long, this galaxy operated under the assumption that might made right. Strong species preyed on weak ones. The powerful ignored the suffering of those who could not defend themselves. That era is finished. The new galactic order was built on a simple principle. Humanity would never again hide their capabilities. Every alien species understood exactly what they were dealing with. There would be no more mistakes about human strength. No more assumptions about human weakness. Dr. Steve Martinez led research teams that began sharing selected human technologies with allied species. The gifts were not random acts of generosity. They were carefully calculated demonstrations of how far beyond alien understanding human science had progressed. Gravity manipulation technology allowed friendly species to build cities on worlds that had been uninhabitable. Medical advances extended alien lifespans by centuries. Agricultural improvements ended hunger on dozens of worlds. Each gift came with a subtle reminder of human superiority and human mercy. The galaxy spent centuries stagnating, Steve explained to his research staff. While they argued about politics and trade rights, we advanced our science by millennia. Now we can choose to share that knowledge with species that prove themselves worthy of trust. The Altarian survivors were among the first to request human assistance. Their trade networks had collapsed when human agents revealed the corruption and exploitation that had made them wealthy. Billions of beings who had depended on Altarian commerce were facing economic disaster. Human economic advisors arrived to help rebuild their systems on more equitable foundations. The new trade networks were designed to benefit all participants, rather than enriching a small elite. Worlds that had been exploited for their resources began to receive fair compensation for their exports. Captain Jake Morrison, who had endured years of humiliation in diplomatic meetings, now commanded respect, wherever he went. His ship arrived at alien worlds to find government officials waiting eagerly to meet with him. The same beings who had once dismissed human concerns now hung on every word of human representatives. The change is remarkable, Jake told his crew as they approached the former Zephyrian capital. 3 months ago, they treated us like beggars. Today, they treat us like gods. Neither attitude is entirely accurate, but I prefer the current situation. The Zephyrian homeworld bore the scars of the human assault. Orbital shipyards floated as debris rings around the planet. Cities showed gaps where government buildings had been precisely targeted and destroyed. But the civilian population was intact, and human engineers were already helping to rebuild their infrastructure. Former Ambassador Velthon met Jake at the spaceport. The proud Zephyrian who had once called humans weak now walked with the careful movements of someone who understood his place in the new order. Captain Morrison, Velthon said, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance. My people are grateful for your assistance in rebuilding our world. We have learned much about human capabilities in recent months. Jake nodded politely. There was no satisfaction in the aliens' humiliation. The war had never been about revenge or conquest. It had been about ensuring that such a war would never be necessary again. The new galactic civilization that emerged from the ashes of the old was fundamentally different. Humanity sat at its center, not as tyrants but as guardians. Their fleets patrolled space lanes to ensure that no species could prey on weaker neighbors. Their agents monitored communications to prevent the kind of genocidal planning that had led to the destruction of New Denver. Children on alien worlds grew up learning human languages alongside their own. Universities throughout the galaxy offered courses in human history and philosophy. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive newcomers were now recognized as the most advanced civilization in known space. Dr. Lisa Carter, whose hidden preparations had made human victory possible, now worked openly to ensure galactic peace. Her facilities were no longer disguised as civilian installations. The weapons laboratories, intelligence networks, and military bases operated in plain sight as reminders of what would happen to any species that threatened human civilians. Peace through strength, she explained to her staff. The galaxy is peaceful now because everyone understands the consequences of aggression. We do not need to hide our power anymore. We simply need to be ready to use it if necessary. The transformation was complete. Humanity had revealed their true nature to the galaxy and found that honesty served them better than deception. The peaceful facade had been necessary when they were weak and vulnerable. Now that they were strong, they could afford to be honest about their capabilities. The galaxy had learned to coexist not with the harmless newcomers they thought they knew, but with the apex predators who had been patient enough to give peace a chance. The result was a civilization more stable and prosperous than any that had existed before. Never again would anyone mistake human restraint for human limitation. Never again would the galaxy forget what happened when humanity stopped pretending to be anything other than what evolution had made them, the most dangerous species in the cosmos now and forever.